Rainy nights have a strange way of setting the perfect scene for horror. There's something about the steady tapping of raindrops, the hiss of wind against windows, and the soft, muffled sounds of a world soaked in water that makes every shadow seem darker and every noise feel closer. Maybe it's because rain drowns out the familiar sounds we rely on, or maybe it's because, on a stormy night, you realize how isolated you really are. Today, we're diving into 3 very scary true horror stories. All of them taking place on rainy nights, when the weather wasn't the only thing stalking the darkness. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some people still fear the sound of rain against their window. The first story comes from a man named Marcus, a night shift delivery driver working in a quiet suburban area where most routes were predictable. Food runs, packages, the occasional wrong address. But one night during a relentless downpour, something changed. It was close to midnight when Marcus received a food delivery order from a house on the outskirts of town. The rain was pounding so hard that visibility was nearly zero, his windshield wipers barely keeping up. As he followed the GPS down a winding unlit road, he pulled up to a property that made his stomach drop. The house looked completely abandoned. No lights in the windows. Overgrown weeds stretched across the cracked driveway. The paint was peeling, the shutters hanging loose. It had the look of a place long forgotten. Thinking he had the wrong location, Marcus double-checked the address. But the delivery app confirmed it. This was the place. Still unsure, Marcus stepped out of the car, shielding the food from the rain, and walked up to the porch. He knocked once. Nothing. Knocked again, louder. That's when it happened. The front door creaked open slowly, as if pulled by invisible hands. Marcus hesitated. He called out, "Hello." But there was no answer, only the hiss of rain and a distant rumble of thunder. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but waiting. Just as he was about to turn back, a woman's voice floated from inside. "You can leave it on the table." It was soft, too soft, almost like a whisper wrapped in static, and it came from somewhere deep within the house. Chills ran down Marcus's spine. He placed the food on the porch instead and began backing away. As he reached the driveway, a flash of lightning lit up the house, and that's when he saw it. A pale face watching him through the front window, no expression, no movement, just watching. And as the darkness swallowed the light again, the figure vanished. The next morning, Marcus reported the event to his company. But according to their system, no order had been placed for that address. In fact, that house had been listed as vacant for over a decade. He never took a delivery in that part of town again. Creepy, right? But hold on, the next story will make you think twice before stopping for a stranger on a rainy night. This second account comes from Melissa, a college student who was driving across state lines late one stormy night due to a family emergency. The rain was merciless, a constant roar against the windshield, and the highway was nearly deserted. It was one of those nights where the darkness feels deeper, the silence heavier, and every shadow seems to stretch a little too far. As Melissa made her way through a remote, rural stretch of road, she spotted a man standing by the shoulder. He was drenched head to toe, waving frantically with his hood pulled low over his face. A car sat a few yards behind him, hazard lights blinking in the rain. She slowed down, unsure. Her instincts screamed no, but guilt crept in. What if he really needed help? Against her better judgment, she pulled over. The man hurried to her window, voice muffled under the hood, and asked for a ride to the next town. But something was off. His tone wasn't frantic or grateful. It was calm. Too calm? Cold, even. Melissa hesitated, but finally gave in and unlocked the door. The man slid into the passenger seat without a word. For the next 10 minutes, they drove in tense silence, the only sound the relentless drum of rain. Melissa tried not to look, but every time she glanced over, he just sat there, still staring ahead, not blinking, not moving. Eventually, she broke the silence, forcing a smile. "So what happened to your car?" The man turned slowly to her and said, in a voice that chilled her to the core, "What car?" Her blood ran cold. She looked in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind them. No hazards, no broken down vehicle. Just the endless, empty highway and the dark curtain of rain. Heart pounding, she pulled into the next gas station and told the man she needed to use the restroom. She rushed inside and immediately called the police. When they arrived just minutes later, her car was still parked outside, but the man was gone. No footprints, no sightings, no sign he'd ever been there at all. To this day, Melissa can't explain who or what got into her car that night, and she hasn't driven alone at night since. Still with me, because this last story, this one gets under your skin in a way the others don't. Sometimes, the scariest things aren't strangers or abandoned houses. Sometimes, they're the things you've lived with your entire life without even knowing it. The third story comes from a man named Daniel, who grew up in a quiet countryside home in England. His family lived in an old stone house that had been in the family for generations. Daniel always loved rainy nights. The sound of the storm lulled him to sleep. But one night, when he was 16, the rain woke him up instead. It wasn't the storm itself, it was something else. A soft tapping on his bedroom window. At first, Daniel thought it was just branches swaying in the wind. But then he realized his bedroom was on the second floor. Curious and a little unnerved, he got up and peered outside. Nothing, just rain streaking down the glass. As he turned back toward his bed, lightning flashed, and in the brief moment of light, he saw it. A reflection in the window of someone standing right behind him. Daniel spun around, heart hammering in his chest. The room was empty. He convinced himself it was a trick of the light, nerves playing with his mind. But the next night, it happened again. Tapping on the window, shadow in the reflection. This continued for weeks, always during rainy nights, always when he was alone. Eventually, Daniel told his parents. They brushed it off, saying old houses make noises and storms can mess with your head. Years passed. Daniel moved away, went to university, built a life. He'd almost forgotten about those nights, until his father called him years later with news that sent a chill through his spine. During a renovation of the old house, workers discovered a hidden room behind the wall of Daniel's childhood bedroom. A sealed space with no doors or windows. Inside was a single wooden chair facing the wall, and deep scratches all over the floorboards, as if someone had been dragged out of the room against their will. Nobody could explain why the room existed or who had used it. Daniel doesn't know what he saw in those reflections, but he's sure of one thing. Something had been sharing that house with his family all along. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many of the noises we hear on a rainy night are just the wind? And how many are something else entirely? These stories all have something in common. They happened on nights when people felt most vulnerable, when the rain erased the familiar world around them and left them alone with something dark, something watching. There's a reason why horror movies so often begin on stormy nights. Because the truth is, rain doesn't just wash things away, it also hides things. Footsteps, voices, even the sound of someone standing just behind you. Think about it. When was the last time you heard a strange noise during a storm and just shrugged it off as the weather? How sure are you that it was? And if you think these stories are chilling, wait until you hear what we have lined up next. Real-life encounters with the unexplained. Moments caught on camera, and stories so bizarre, even skeptics have been left speechless. Make sure to subscribe and stay with us, because the next video dives even deeper into the dark side of real life. Remember, next time you hear rain tapping at your window, listen closely, because you might not be as alone as you think.